Hello and welcome to the KE Report. Shad and Corey here as your hosts, and today we're getting an update from Emerita Resources. Emerita is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker EMO and on the OTCQB under the ticker EMOTF. And we are joined today with the CEO and Chairman of Emerita Resources, David Gower. And David, great to get you back on the show as always. It's been a wild week here in Emerita, and there's a lot to get into. Of course, front and center is the news that you put out to the marketplace on Friday about the decision of the criminal courts in Spain as it relates to the Aznalcóllar project and whether that tender would be awarded to the company. I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between the criminal courts and the administrative courts and how it's ultimately the administrative courts that need to make this decision. Maybe you could put some color around that and just describe whatever you can say from your legal counsel as far as the path forward here.
Sure, Chad, and thank you very much for the welcome. And the criminal courts in Seville, their focus was on the criminal lawsuit, basically, the crimes of corruption. And that had nothing to do directly with the actual adjudication of the awarding of the public tender, which that aspect of the trial is handled by the administrative courts. The value of the criminal court would have been that had there been a conviction under Spanish law, if there's commission of a crime in awarding a public tender, that bid must be disqualified. So had that happened, then the administrative court ruling would have been more or less a foregone conclusion. That's not to say that the administrative court still won't rule in favor of Emerita. One of the advantages of having gone through the whole criminal court process in the 3.5-year police investigation is that the judiciary and the police have really exposed numerous irregularities and even illegalities, I would say, that will affect the ruling under the administrative court. And does this happen? Well, IBW actually, there was no criminal case on IBW, but we actually did have a dispute on the public tender for that one as well. And it was overturned by the courts in our favor. In that case, I believe it was Trafigura or Matza, their Spanish subsidiary that was on the other side. They were the initial winner, but it was an unfair awarding of the public tender. And that once the courts reviewed the information, they did agree with Emerita's case and caused the government to reverse the awarding of that public tender. So it does happen. We are very surprised, actually, that there weren't some convictions for at least prevarication in the criminal court side. In my view, the evidence was quite overwhelming, but respectfully to the judges, I guess their conclusion is that this is a case that is better dealt with in the administrative courts. So that's where we are. We are going through all of the details of the ruling with Spanish counsel, and we have until the 15th of this month to decide whether to file an application for appeal of the criminal case, and we'll consider the pros and cons of doing that. I would point out that winning the criminal case, just to reiterate, does not really cause us to win the property, which is overwhelmingly, that's what our objective is. So that will be part of the equation as we consider how to map the path forward with respect to the criminal trial outcome.
So, David, is there anything more that you need to do for the administration court ruling? And do you have a general timeline on how long it could take for the administration court to rule on this? Is this going to be another multi-year process?
No. The administrative court actually started their work in 2022. It actually was probably late 2021 when the criminal court at that time, 5 Superior Court judges declared that there would be no further grounds for appeal, and that the case would be decided on the basis of the evidence that was already before the court. So once the criminal court closed off any new changes to that trial, the administrative court activated its efforts. And they telegraphed in 2022 that they had been through all of the information and they concur with the findings of the criminal court. The findings of the criminal court at that time were that 5 Superior Court judges declared that certain crimes of corruption very likely were committed. And they laid out in that resolution in very detailed form what those might be. So I would assume that the administrative court will review its resolution from that time in light of anything new that came out of the criminal trials recently. But there's no reason why they would be delayed for any length of time. We will be reviewing in detail with our counsel tomorrow and the next day how to proceed. And these will be questions that we'll be getting more clarity on. But we have already asked them at a high level, and their view is it would be likely within a couple of months. It's not going to be years or late next year or anything like that. There's really no reason why it should take that long. Nobody's on trial in this case. It's just an examination of breaking of the regulations. So no, we would expect sometime in the first quarter of next year likely to have the answer to that.
Okay, David, I appreciate you putting some color around the whole Aznalcóllar situation because we've seen a dramatic market reaction since trading opened up this week, and a lot of people thinking it's totally over, where that's not the case. It's the administration court's decision. Also, the criminal charges, like you say, wouldn't have meant you automatically got the project. It just would have been a pretty slam dunk situation for the administrative courts to say, okay, if there was a criminal charge, then the awarding of the tender needs to be switched. So there's still a chance that Aznalcóllar comes into the fold. But I think the valuation of the company has changed so dramatically this week that we should probably reframe what the value proposition of the company is. You have two projects that you definitely have in the mix, and that's the IBW project, which is the flagship polymetallic project in Spain, and we can get into that next. And you still have the Nuevo Tintillo project, which is an earlier stage exploration project, but still a lot of sizzle there. Let's shift to IBW because just that project alone, especially with all the metallurgical work you've been doing and the better recoveries on the precious metals, in particular gold from two of the three deposit areas, really reframes the IBW project to be quite a bit more than what the market cap is now. So talk to us about IBW as the flagship underpinning Emerita Resources.
Yeah, well, clearly IBW has all along been our keystone property because it is the one that we own. It's the one where we've invested all of our energy and money really at this point on a technical basis. It's an incredibly valuable project, and as you point out, one that's getting more valuable almost daily with the improvement in not just precious metal prices, but also copper and zinc. When we did the resource estimate that was released last May, we were using 64% as the gold recovery. We now see in at least two different technologies recoveries well over 80% and over 90% for the silver. Base metals recoveries are good, and we produce saleable concentrates, it appears, based on our information. So, and as it stands right now, there's even without updating the resource, and we've been drilling all year since that was done, almost all on Alcura, which is a copper gold rich system. The gold and silver will more than pay for all of the costs. Actually, the gold itself will at today's prices, all the capital and operating. So everything else is essentially 100% margin. Now that with the new metal prices, I think not only did we use a 64% gold recovery, but I think we used $2,300 gold as a price, and maybe $15 or $18 silver. So when we redo this resource estimate, probably around the end of the first quarter, that'll be the final resource estimate used in the pre-feasibility study, which we started. The value of this deposit, or these three deposits in combination, will be materially higher, and there will be more tons than the previous estimate. So, no, it's a very valuable project. All of the deposits are at or near surface, ramp accessible, and that's the basis that we're looking at for developing them. Yeah, it should be at least a 20-year mine life based on what we see in front of us right now. And in terms of how the project is proceeding, and as far as de-risking it, we've had very good discussions with the regulators. Our AAU application or our environmental impact study. They're very close, based on the feedback we're receiving, to completing the review of that. We have answered all of the questions along the way. So we do expect in the very near future to see that put out for public consultation. The important thing about the public consultation step is it only goes out once the environmental department and the mining department, that's basically their declaration that they finished their work and they support the project. Of course, in January of this year, the project was granted the designation of strategic importance by the government of Andalusia. So that already is a declaration by the government that this project is as important to them as it is to us in terms of what it can do for the regional economy and employment. So the ducks are well lined up in a row to see a fantastic 2026 for the IBW project moving forward. We expect sometime mid to late, say second, third quarter to get the mining license. That'll dovetail with commencement of the bankable feasibility, if you will, or the definitive feasibility, and looking to have it financed and starting construction probably the following year. So this project, you should see significant valuation improvement as that project is de-risked with these catalysts over the coming 6 to 12 months.
David, can you just recap where the resource stands currently from the most updated one earlier this year? And with all these different metals and the changes in metals prices, then you already went through how it could change moving forward. But in your eyes, what's the allocation of value here between the different metals in the at least current resource that will be updated?
So there's about 1 million ounces of gold, just under, in the current resource, and about 50, little over 50, 55 million ounces of silver. So I talked a little bit about the metal prices that were used. In today's prices, so when this was done, using those recoveries that I mentioned, the precious metals were probably worth about 30%. Zinc was about 30%, and lead plus copper was about 30%. Presently, I would guess that the precious metals are around 55 to 60% of the revenue. And the revenue on the base metals has gone up as well. The tonnage was about 19 million tons in the indicated category and 6.8 million tons in inferred, so more or less 25 million tons. The footprint of the drilling at Alcura has almost doubled the size of that because we had really just started with Alcura. We had about 1 million tons, I think, attributed to it. So we'll see at least a double or triple likely there. And that is one where we will see continued, it's still open. We're still drilling, of course. And then the other areas where we won't necessarily add a lot of tons, but in terms of overall tonnage, but we're also converting inferred resources to indicated resources because for the pre-feasibility, we need them in that indicated and measured category to use them. You can only use inferred resources in a PEA, and we want to we want to skip that step and go straight to much more detailed engineering because it's just costs us time and money to do that step when we have shallow deposits that we can drill off right away.
David, another angle that I don't know if people are factoring in because it's relatively new for the company is you've made some acquisitions to the property package here and bolted on quite a substantial amount of potential upside here too. We talked last time a little bit about the San Antonio license. Maybe just speak to how, in addition to better metals recoveries, better metals prices, an expanded resource, and an expanded upcoming economic study with the PFS, you still have a lot of blue sky upside that you just bolted on.
Yeah, so we've added land package, which is all of the surrounding ground around the IBW project, essentially all the way to the Portuguese border. I guess we probably tripled or quadrupled the size of the land package, but more importantly, within that package, there's about 8 small past producers Uh, there is a fairly large mine that operated for a long time. It's called São Domingo, just across the border in Portugal. Um, it produced about 20 million tons of copper-rich ore. So again, most of these past producers are between La Romanera and that other large deposit. It's a highly productive belt, if you want to think of it that way. And none of these older zones have really been explored in a modern context. So we've just let the airborne contract to refly the whole area and start the work on and around these numerous past producers. Some of them very high copper. They were shipping 5% copper a century ago over to Sao Domingo, or primarily that's where it would have gone, to that mill, and then it would have gone off to elsewhere in Europe, I guess, or maybe to the Rio Tinto smelter in Huelva. But it's a highly prospective area with a lot of high grade mineral occurrences from various phases of historical work, but not really much in the last 50 years. So this will be an opportunity for us to do a very good systematic exploration approach to upgrade these targets, drill them. And of course, the beauty of this is once the infrastructure is in at IBW, all of these deposits are close. They can be trucked to that mill. So that the NPV goes way up as the capital goes down because you're only developing a mine. All of the infrastructure is already built on the back of La Romanera. And it's going to be kind of a hub and spoke sort of model, if you will, for anything that's found in the region that will be able to go to that mill over time. I kind of see it as something like the Matagami camp or the Noranda mining camp in Quebec, where you've got, numerous mines over decades and decades that have been feeding into central infrastructure from many different deposits that are found over time. That's what we see as the potential here. There'll be developments here long after probably everybody on this call has hung up their rock pick.
All right, let's move over, David, to one more asset, a bit more earlier stage exploration, that Nuevo Tintillo project. What can you tell us in terms of what exploration might happen here and bring us up to speed on the strategy of this asset?
Sure. So Nuevo Tintillo is a very large property nestled between Aznalcóllar and First Quantum's former operation at Cobre Las Cruces, which is to the southeast, and then the famous Rio Tinto mine to the northwest. We've got about 23 kilometers of stratigraphy. There's about half a dozen known mineral occurrences within that package, of which three small past producers. Last year, we discovered a new zone of Gossan. It looks to extend at surface up to about 400 meters in strike length. And we're getting numerous high-grade gold and silver samples out of this Gossan. Gossans are basically the rusty remains of what would have been outcropping sulfide mineralization originally. The base metals tend to be leached because the pyrite creates sulfuric acid, which naturally just leaches into the groundwater and dissolves the base metals. But the precious metals get left behind. And we have a lot of samples within this now probably well over 50 samples, grading, 1.5 to 3.5 grams per ton gold and up to 165 grams per ton silver. And this is what we essentially would see at surface at La Romanera as well. If you look at the cover of our corporate deck, there's a red stripe there where Romanera comes to surface. And the Romans would have mined that Gossan for the gold, but the base metals were leached. And you're only in this environment, the weathering is not deep. You're going to be in fresh rock within 10 meters likely of surface. So it's a very good target. We're looking to get detailed geophysics done on this and set up and drill it sometime likely in the first half of next year.
Well, David, just as a final thought as we wrap up here, We've covered a lot in this call, but I think we've pointed out that the Aznalcóllar situation is not over yet. We still have to get the administrative court ruling. We've talked about IBW. We've talked about the expanded footprint there. We've talked about Nuevo Tintillo. Anything else you'd say as far as the value proposition for Emerita Resources in lieu of some of the wild moves we're seeing in the marketplace? What would you say to investors nervous or sitting on the fence here about the future of Emerita Resources?
Well, Emerita, I mean, it's got a very exceptional project, I would say, in IBW. It's got very good prospects at Nuevo Tintillo and the San Antonio project. We have a strong treasury. We financed in in August, mid-August, and most of that money is still in the treasury, and we weren't broke when we did the financing. So we're well financed to do all the work that we need to do. We don't have to go back to the market at this valuation. Um, so we will continue to drive IBW forward. We don't really need to take a pause in driving the value of that. If we look at what's happened with companies that transition from exploration to development, the two that we've used in the past are Foran, which is now a $2 billion company, not yet in production, but in